it's really just kind of a gut wrenching song, And when I originally wrote it, it was more of a folk number and kind of a sad song. And Eddie suggested that we kind of flipped it on its head and made it more of an up tempo.
Hey everybody, I'm here today with Marcus King. Marcus, hello, welcome, and happy to see you. It's been a while, man. You're looking good and healthy, making great music, and happy to be talking to you.
I'm happy to be talking to you, man. It's been too long, Alan.
It has been too long. I know I was thinking about that. I met you, I think, when you were about 17, and I've seen you in tiny clubs and Irving Plaza and the Brooklyn Bowl and the Beacon Theater, and it's been really, really fun to watch your career. It's like watching your own kids grow up or something. Like to see you go up the ladder in different steps. There's a few of you guys now whose careers I've seen since the beginning, and it's super gratifying, and it's cool to see your career flourishing and taking different paths.
Well, that's really kind of you to say, man.
Yeah, no, of course. So you got a new record, new album that we're here to talk about, and you recorded it at Capricorn Studios.
I did.
So let's start with just talking about that. Why did you choose Capricorn? It's the first thing you've done there. It's a very specific, intimate kind of place.
Yeah. Well, man, I reconnected with a friend of mine, Eddie Spear, and the last time we'd worked together was actually the last time the band and I had been in the studio together. And the band, really, for those that don't know, is me and my drummer. You know, we've always kind of likened ourselves to like a North Mississippi All Stars or a Black Keys kind of an outfit. We started the band together, uh, Jack and myself, Jack Ryan, who you know well. Um, we started the group together, so it was time for us to get back in it and work on something together. And the timing was just right. And we settled on Capricorn because we just wanted to feel like we were at home, and we also wanted to echo the influence that the bands that recorded there famously had on us. Allman Brothers Band and Wet Willie, Marshall Tucker Band, particularly. So to be back in that A room was really healing to us.
I wanted to ask you about the difference between a Marcus King record and a Marcus King band record. It's interesting what you said that the band is basically you and Jack. Um, why did you go away from it? I think it's been since 2018 since something came out titled Marcus King Band. Why'd you go away from it and why come back to it now?
Well, there was a little bit of a pause just because I moved to Nashville. I was up here. Jack was back in the Carolinas. Jack had a side project he was working on. I was working with Dan Auerbach, and Dan had introduced me to his way of doing things, which was, with the remaining members of the Memphis Boys who played on Dusty Springfield's Son of a Preacher Man and Suspicious Minds
Well, I didn't realize that. That is cool.
and a lot of that Bobby Womack stuff that I love so much. And Dan kind of had this system that he was doing, kind of a Southern fried version of Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. So we kind of had this operation, and he would bring artists in, and he had more or less like a house band that would perform on all this stuff, and they were all Gene Watson and Bobby Wood, Dave Rowe, Billy Sanford. His second session in Nashville, he wrote the riff for Pretty Woman, and he wrote a lot of the riffs on El Dorado, and it was a really incredible experience to work with all those guys. And that was my first time not working with my band, and it kind of allowed me to gain some experience working with other people, and I grew a lot from the experience. And it was a similar situation with the next project on Young Blood, and then again, Rick Rubin had a similar idea, production wise, to bring in some other people for me to garner some inspiration from. So what we did with Mood Swings was he put me in with Chris Dave and Corey Henry, who are two of my favorite musicians, favorite people. It's just different, and the timing of it all just it just took a long time for us to get back to home base. But here
Yeah.
we are.
The musically, you've moved in a little bit of a different direction. To my ears, this is a little more Americana, I guess you would call it, a little more country influence. There's more acoustic guitar on it. Songwriting seems a little different. I'm just wondering, is this just like a natural evolution for you? Does it have to do with some of the shows you've played with people like Chris Stapleton, or that's a chicken and egg question? I don't know which came first. Being based in Nashville, just where your head is. I like what's the genesis of that?
I think as I've grown as an artist, I've I've gotten more confident in my songwriting, and I've gotten more meaningful with the lyrics. Not that I wasn't meaningful before, I just have a better chance of articulating what I want to say. And I feel that the song deserves to be heard in the best light, and it needs to be poignant. And, I wouldn't say that our past works, I wouldn't say that the playing on it was gratuitous per se, but I'd say that it was more instrumentally focused than these newer works are. But I'm just really proud of everybody's ability to play for what the song needs. And when we play live, we stretch all these songs out, and we have a moment for improvisation and a moment for spur of the moment, creativity on the spot, which is still a big part of what we do. But the songwriting has progressed and evolved, so we kind of fell in line behind that.
Well, for what it's worth, I love this album. And I think the songs are great and it sounds very natural. Like there's nothing about it that sounds forced or like you were trying to do something. It
Yeah,
flows.
I mean, I don't think it's self-serving to say that it's you know not contrived in any way. There's nothing on it that I feel is derivative. I'm so proud of this work. We put so much into it, but it did, like you say, it kind of happened organically. It happened naturally, and basically what we wanted to do was try to see how I can put this. I feel like our lane of country is more country to me than a lot of the country that is called country now. You know what I mean? And that's fine. I dig pop country to a certain degree. I have friends that perform pop country. I have friends that perform, you know, hip hop country or whatever the hell you want to call it. And I think there's room for all of this stuff. But I think there's certainly room for Southern rock country. It's been 30 years since the Kentucky Headhunters came on the scene. Travis Tritt was a Southern rock artist, in my opinion. Charlie Daniels' band was a Southern rock band, but that was a country band to me. You got a fiddle in the band, you know, you're either Dixie Dregs or you're Charlie Daniels. And I mean, there's room for all of it. And I love the fans that you know, we've met being out with Chris Stapleton and Zach Brown band. And I think that the country community is a really strong one. It's a really loyal fan base. And we wanted to give them something that offered our brand, our South Carolina brand of country music that we learned from the greats like the Marshall Tucker Band.
Since you were so young, that I think people lose sight of how young you still are. I mean, how old are you right now?
I'm 29.
29. Okay, so you're not yet 30.
No,
Uh,
sir.
but so you did a lot of your growing up and going through different stages and publicly, which a lot of artists do before anybody outside their home area ever hears of them. Nobody outside of a couple markets ever heard Bruce Springsteen playing with a 12-piece band with horns and playing, et cetera, et cetera. I can name a million different examples, but so I think that's part of it that you come going through this has come to this. You have some really interesting guests on this record, and I want to say before we talk about them that each of the guests, and as people hear the record, they'll know what I'm talking about, but fits in really well to the song. So it's not like gratuitous, like let's get a name on here.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Let's talk about them a little bit, and you can tell me about how you came to work with them and how you think they fit on that song. And so you have Caitlin Butts and Jamie Johnson on a song together, and Jamie, as he always does, his voice comes in like the voice of God, and even more so when it's a guest spot because you're a few songs in, and all of a sudden there's the voice of God. But could you talk a little bit about working with Caitlin? And I believe that's a song you co-wrote with Lainey Wilson.
Yeah, it sure is. When I wrote that song with Lainey, the most down home, just one of my best good friends here in town. We met years ago. We got paired to write together. And when we wrote this song, we wrote it with our other good friend, Meg McCree, who's a fantastic writer here in town. I mean, it was so good. And Lainey, how she does, she's so damn talented. But, not only is she an electric performer, but she's a damn good writer. She's like modern day Dolly Parton. So she's like, man, I got this idea, here today, gone tomorrow. And she started singing part of the chorus that she had. And it was so good that I was just excited to be writing a song for Lainey's record. Because I said, there's no chance that I'll get to cut this. We're going to be writing this for Lainey to record. And as luck would have it, I had the opportunity to cut it myself. And we were thinking about who we should have sing on it with us, because it really had that familial energy. And I knew I wanted to have guests on it right away. And for a couple of years at that point, my wife had been putting me on to Caitlin Butts and the work that she did with Vince Gill. And I just really loved Caitlin Butts's energy. She sent us a package to our house when she'd first put her record Roadrunner out, or before so, I guess. And it had like a lady's tank top in there for Briley, and it had little pillows like over the breasts in the
Yeah.
tank top, and it said cowboy pillows. And I just thought that was so funny. And she had rattlesnake eggs in there, and just a lot of really funny little things about her record. And I just really fell in love with her wit and her charm. And when I met her at the Grand Ole Opry, an instant connection. I really liked her energy. So I think the next day I asked her to come sing on that song. And, Jamie was another person who I've always been inspired by. Somebody like, when I met him, it was an instant connection. Right away we were just buddies, and there was a mutual respect for one another. And my wife met actually at the Ryman Auditorium. They really hit it off. They had the same birthday, and he was going through woman troubles, and in a matter of like 5 minutes, I walked out to take a piss, and I came back, and he and Briley, he had just spilled his guts to her. She's that kind of person. You can really open up to her. And he became such a good friend of ours. He ended up officiating our marriage a year later, and he's remained a good friend of the family. And he was an obvious choice for a guest on the record. And this song was just a perfect fit. And like he said, I mean, his voice, when he comes in, it just shakes the rafters.
Yeah. Did he sound like that when he officiated your wedding?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's got a very earnest, commanding voice.
Yeah, I love that guy, man. Uh, you have Billy Strings on there, and I know you guys have played live together a few times, I believe. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have my old neighbor William on there. Me and Bill used to be neighbors over in East Nashville. I don't think I could afford to live in his neighborhood now, but man, I love that guy so much. And as busy as he is, he made some time for little old me, and that just meant the world to me. I was on the road, and he was home, and he had an opportunity to get in the studio and work on this song for me. And as soon as I wrote the song, I wrote it with Nick Monson and Jamie Hartman out in L.A. And it's a cowboy number. That's all it is. It's just my version of like a Morricone-esque good, bad, and the ugly. I was really inspired by like people like Toy Caldwell writing like old Western songs. And I wanted to apply some of the real life strife that I'd gone through to this backdrop of like a Western. So that was kind of the intention with that. So I heard Billy on it right away, and he was kind enough to you know, lend his.
Along with the slight shift in your songwriting that we're talking about, that comes across in your playing too. There's more telly sounds. I believe it is actually on a telly, but you can tell me about that. It's the same sort of question. It's like a chicken and egg thing. Is your guitar playing shifting a little bit to match the songs, or are the songs shifting a little bit because you're getting interested in different types of guitar playing?
Well, I think that's a fine question, man. When I'm at home, I don't like to touch the guitar. I I get inspired. I sit down and I write a lot of the piano, play a lot of piano, or I'll sit and I'll play my pedal steel guitar, or I'll play my fiddle, or my banjo, my ukulele, anything but the guitar. If I do pick up a guitar, it's this gut string fretless number that my
Really?
buddy told me about.
Why do you
Just
think that is? Do you think when you go back, like when you're recording or gigging, does having played different instruments make you approach the electric guitar differently?
100%. The guitar is something that I'm so familiar with. It's something like to me that's like it's like riding a bike or speaking of the English language. If I moved abroad and I only spoke, you know, Spanish in Spain for 6 months, when I come home, it's not going to be like I don't remember uh, how to speak English. It's one of those things that's so deeply rooted in me. So for me, it's kind of like it's a little bit like living abroad. I like to play different instruments. I'm, deeply influenced by the fiddle player on the record. His name's Billy Contreras, and pedal steel player on majority of the record, Paul Franklin. I mean, gosh, I'm just blown away by his approach to music as a whole. And this is something that's kind of been in my mind since I was a kid, and I read Victor Wooten's book, and he kind of harped on the importance of being a musician and not being a bass player, and just getting off on music instead of getting off on your primary instrument. So just always been influenced by that kind of idea, and I think it's definitely had an influence on my playing and the way that I approach the instrument because it's a holy experience for me to be able to sit at a guitar and say exactly what I have on my mind. I don't have to think about it really. Not to say that I don't think about it. I mean,
But do you ever lose any calluses or lose any? Because there is the physical aspect of just, keeping your fingers sharp.
I'm never home off the road long enough. I mean, I maybe go like a week without playing guitar, you know. And when I say I don't play when I'm at home, like I'm never home more than like a few days. So
Yeah. Just to go back to what you said at the very beginning of that answer was that you do a lot of writing on the piano.
I do
That's interesting to me too. So, like on most of these songs on the record, you wrote them on piano.
a fair number of them. Yeah, main
How
example I can think of was a song called "Carry Me Home." I wrote that on the piano.
That's a beautiful song. Now, Carolina Honey, I think is sort of a really unabashed love song. I assume is for your wife.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Is that about meeting her?
it is. There's two songs on the record that kind of are the um theme of the record. There's two songs that the record's kind of built around, and that's a song called "Die Alone" and "Carolina Honey." And those 2 days happened subsequently, the day before and the day I met my wife. And Carolina Honey, it does that thing that I love in songwriting when you can have a catchy up tempo kind of a groove, but the lyrics are, you know, there's a real juxtaposition from the chorus to the verse lyrics because it's really just kind of a gut wrenching song. And when I originally wrote it, it was more of a folk number and kind of a sad song. And Eddie suggested that we kind of flipped it on its head and made it more of an up tempo number. But yeah, that's one that's about my wife and you know her ability to make me see that life was worth living, and kind of gave me the kick in the ass I needed to start living it.
And so that's why Die Alone, I guess, is before you, the day before you met her. I
Yeah,
don't know, metaphorically or maybe even literally.
no, quite literally. I'd gone back out on the road with the intention of just drinking and drugging myself um, to death, really. That was the intention. And when I met her, all that really changed. And it was something that, growth is the hardest thing we can do sometimes as human beings. And I was really, it was really hard, but it's after the fact, you're thankful for it. And, you know, those that know my wife know that she don't put up with no bullshit. So, and I was a walking, you know, I was just baggage, man. I was in real rough shape, but she saw the potential in me and she helped me get back up on my feet. And it's mindfulness practice because you got to practice it. You got to do it every day or you'll fall back into those habits and depression and suicidal tendencies and substance abuse and all of that. It's got very many faces and it's got the ability to suck you back in even when you think you're doing all right. I'm always just floored by that woman and just really thankful that she took a chance on me like she did.
Well, I think it's also great that you've been so open about your struggles with mental health and substance abuse because obviously it's so widespread in our world and not everybody is so open about it. And I do believe that talking about it is helpful to other people.
Yeah, you know, if I can be the voice for that one or two people that they hear me talking about it, but they don't feel confident enough to speak about it openly, I just talk about it like anything else going on, man. If I'm having mood swings or if I'm, really depressed out on the road, I speak about it openly on stage. I speak about it with my bandmates. It's just part of our makeup. I mean, especially kids in my generation, it's just you got these instant kind of serotonin releases, on social media or for me it was drugs as well or alcohol. It's just I don't know. You just got to be open about it, and
Uh,
that's the beauty of it. It's
I
just
love the
speak.
song Hunky Tonk Hell. It has a little bit, it reminds me a little bit of some Sturgill Simpson stuff with the sort of country funk and the horns. Has he been a big influence on you?
Oh yeah, man, love Sturgill, and I mean I don't think I'm unique in that. Um,
No.
he's one of the baddest motherfuckers on two legs, and I'm always influenced by him. But you know, really, what gave it that Sturgill vibe was the horns, and I was adamant about that. That was one of the very few disagreements me and my producer have had. Or I said we got to put the horns on this, and it's got to feel like you know, what was that Sturgill record with the Sailor's Guide?
Yeah,
I,
it's just an
I can't.
unbelievable album. That's when he
I mean,
blew up Saturday Night Live.
this is magnum opus,
Yeah.
me, and I was just really influenced by that record, and obviously love Waylon Jennings, and I was like, I just want to do some country funk, man. That's what Paul Riddle always talks about, country funk.
I know. We're going to talk about Toy Factory
Yep.
and Paul Riddle and Marshall Tucker Band, but I mean, yeah, Paul told me that he always objected to when people called Marshall Tucker Band country rock. He said, "Well, I prefer country funk." And
Yeah.
it makes absolute sense, and certainly for Sergio and Honky Tonk Hero is right in there in that tradition.
I appreciate it.
So Drew Smithers is a guitar player in your band, old friend of mine, so I'm biased, but I think he's a great player and a great addition, and you guys play great together. I know it's not new anymore, but before you had added him, you hadn't had another guitar player in the band. So why did you want another guitar player, or was it more that you just met Drew and decided you wanted him, or what was how did that all come about?
Well, I met Drew and he was with his old group, Bishop Gunn, and they were actually out opening for us in the Midwest. We'd always end up hanging out, me and Drew, and just talking about music, life, and we just quickly became really good friends. And the way we played together was just, I mean, it's hard to put words to it, really. It's just like chemistry was there, you know? Chemistry was really profound. So he was the only person I considered as a second guitar player. And being a front man and the primary writer, you know, it started out as a way to take a little pressure off myself so I could, you know, handle having two or three different jobs in the band, as it were. But then it became like this whole other tool, this whole other trick that we had in our bag. And, you know, we really play like one player. He's one of the finest players and finest people I've ever had the chance to meet. So it's inspiring to have another guitar player on stage, you know? It's just a page out of Clapton's book. I always play better when there's another guitar player on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. Carry Me Home, you mentioned before, lyrically, I think is like a love letter to where you grew up.
Yeah.
And if I got that right, but musically also is a beautiful song. And it has that harmony slide part, which I
Yeah.
had assumed was a part doubled or something, but I actually texted with Drew, who told me it's the two of you playing together, which is really cool. So a harmony slide is something, you know, it immediately calls to mind George Harrison because he did that the most
Really?
with himself.
We've been, I mean, that song, since we've been talking about the Marshall Tucker Band, you know, I kind of got the title of the song was from, you know, when George McCorkle passed away, he lived here in Nashville, and they sent the Tucker bus up here to pick him up and bring him back to Spartanburg, where they let him rest. And that was like 15 years ago, and I was always really, you know, I always thought that was really intense, you know, and I just had been thinking about that, and I got this title "Carry Me Home" in my head, and it's one that kind of bounced around for like a year or two. Me and my wife would sit at the piano and kind of, I would kind of work it out with her, you know, whenever I'd have another idea about it. And it's one that I started fooling with on the piano, and it didn't really come to life until, you know, I always like to ask whatever producer I'm working with if there's any homework they want me to do. And Eddie's suggestion was that I go and listen or read East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And I really liked the way that he could paint a vivid picture to the reader. So this was my attempt to be as Steinbeck as possible in the confines of a, you know, a song. And I wanted it to be obviously about where I come from in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So wanted to write a love letter to the region of the country that I've come from. And then Eddie's influence also brings us that, you know, delightful, like Jeff Lynne, George Harrison-esque instrumental, you know.
Yeah.
Say,
Thank you. It's a beautiful song. So, man, we're talking about Marshall Tucker. You just did a project with Paul T. Riddle, the drummer of the Marshall Tucker Band. And I know you know this, but I'm saying for anyone else who might hear this, one of the most greatest, warmest, smartest, kindest, most engaging people I know that and of course, a great drummer. Anyone who's ever listened to any Marshall Tucker Band knows that. You've done this project with him, Charlie Starr, O'Teal, called Toy Factory. So far, it's a record that's not out yet, but will be one of these days, and one live performance. And I know there's more coming. Could you just talk a little bit about that and what that means to you? Because I talked to Paul extensively about what you mean to him and to that music, but I want to hear it from your perspective.
well, the Marshall Tucker Band does and did always represent a band that was able to pick up and get out of South Carolina. I've always said that the best export we have, second only to peaches in South Carolina, is music. And as a young kid, the Marshall Tucker Band being 30 minutes away from where I was in Greenville, I was really influenced by them and their ability to have the wherewithal to encapsulate what South Carolina music is and take it to a major scale, take it to a international level, you know, scale like they did. And I was always really proud of that. And and encouraged me to do the same thing. So Paul Riddle and I, we were connected by my guitar instructor, Steve Watson. And as soon as we connected, we obviously hit it off like a wildfire. And when he asked me to be a part of this project a couple of years ago, I was really taken aback and I was really honored. And I was really excited to breathe new life into this music that I hold so dear and that I've been so influenced and encouraged by. So it's been, kind of a painstakingly slow process with everybody being in different label deals and, you know, just a cruel hand of time. But we finally played our first live show, first of many more to come. And everybody's there for the right reasons. Everybody's there for that music and its importance and its cultural impact, as I like to say to my friends at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because they're still wondering, if there's a place for the Marshall Tucker Band on that long list of inductees. And I say that there is. I think that that's a very miscarriage of justice, if you ask me, and it's something that needs to be corrected very soon. The Marshall Tucker Band needs to be inducted right away, and it's something that I've been petitioning for the last couple of years.
You mentioned Steve Watson, your guitar instructor, connecting you to Paul. I mean,
Yeah.
Paul told me, now you went to a performing arts high school, right? And that's where Steve was your instructor.
I did,
And
man.
yeah, Paul told me, Steve is an old friend of his, and he said that he had never done anything like this. And he started calling him and saying, I got this kid who's just incredible. He sings, he plays. I don't know how to help him more. I need some, you got to get involved. And he said he was sort of taken aback because, again, Steve had never done that in all his years of teaching. And then finally he said, well, he's Marvin King's son. And Paul said, oh, okay. All right, this is starting to make sense. Because if anyone doesn't know that hears this, I mean, Marvin, your father, Marcus's father, is a great guitar player and an old friend of the guys in the Marshall Tucker Band. I mean, that seemed that he knew them from way back, right? So you didn't mention that when you're talking about the influence, but I mean, it's part of your own very direct lineage too with your father.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And all those guys respected my father and his playing, and my grandfather was such a big part of the scene. And I mean, the King family was always really synonymous with the South Carolina music scene. So yeah, it was really touching to hear about the way that the Tucker boys thought of my father, and how inspired they were by him, just as I was, and many others too.
What kind of musician was your grandfather? I know all about your father.
My grandfather was a country and western musician. He was a career serviceman in the Air Force, the United States Air Force. That's how he met my grandmother when he was stationed over in Munich, Germany. And he was head of the culinary arts for the Air Force. And he was also in charge of the NCO clubs and, their, you know, um, get togethers and their dances and their galas and balls and all that. So he would hire country and western musicians to come and play on the bass. And he hired people like he hired Johnny Cash, hired Charlie Pride, and there's a long list of country musicians. And his band, they would back up the musician that would come over to play for the GIs on the bass. So my grandfather was a career musician. He was a weekend warrior. He played every honky tonk between here, you know, the moon. He was one of my greatest influences and supporters. And yeah, he was just a bad dude, man.
Yeah. So you're in a way you are living your father and your grandfather's dream with
Yeah, my grandfather, he lied about his age and enlisted in the army when he was 16 because you know, he grew up in a rough household and he had gotten the shit end of some horse reins. He'd gotten beaten one too many times, so he left. But just before he left, he had played a competition. This was in the days of Roy Acuff and the architects of the Nashville music scene were kind of scouting all these surrounding Appalachian areas and they were trying to find musicians to come up here and really start this thing off, in the dates of Hank Williams and Webb Pierce come to Nashville and kind of starting this thing up, Music City. And he had played a competition on fiddle, and he didn't find out until he was already, overseas that he had won that competition. So when I finally moved to Nashville and I played the Grand Ole Opry and I played his guitar, I dedicated that show to him. And, I always bring his guitar with me to the Opry because that's the only way I can bring him to the Opry with me because he never got a chance to go. He's just a classic example of life getting in the way, and he had a family to support. But I owe so much to him and the rest of my family too, because they always viewed music as an honest way of making a living. They didn't see it as like some kind of a pipe dream. They saw it as, for me, it was just like if I had grown up in a family of mechanics, or I'd grown up in a family of carpenters, or whatever the family trade is. When you're old enough, you get into the family trade, man. That's how
And
it
you were
was.
out playing gigs when you were 13, 14, 15, right?
8.
8 with your dad or with,
Yeah, with my dad and my grandpa.
yeah. And the ES 345 was your grandpa's, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So do you still have that on the road, or do you have one of the Gibson the custom models that you play now?
It depends. If I'm flying, I usually bring a backup model. But if the bus is leaving from Nashville, I'll bring it with me. I mean, nothing plays quite like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a family heirloom. It's the most inspiring instrument I have in my arsenal.
And what about the Telecaster that you're playing? What is that?
I've been playing a '66 Esquire, and it's one that I'm pretty sure the situation, the way I got that one, I guess I bought it. I was drinking a lot at the time, and I forgot that I bought it. And the folks at Carter Mesh were like, "You gotta come get this guitar." I was like, "I reckon I should, huh?" And I almost parted with it, and I fell in love with the guitar, and it's probably the only good thing that ever came from my drinking.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, if you're going to make a drinking decision you forget about, at least that was a good one compared to it's not the
Yeah,
story you usually hear that you forgot about. So,
yeah, it's probably the only positive from my
uh,
drinking.
yeah. And speaking of Carter Vintage, and we mentioned Billy Strings, I don't know when that was, but the session you two did together there is just beautiful. Just,
Yeah,
but it was about 100 degrees a couple of weeks ago. I watched and shared the summertime because it just felt like I listened to as many versions of summertime as I could find that day. And your guys is just gorgeous.
I appreciate that, man. That was just
Yeah.
me hanging on, trying to keep up with Billy.
You did fine. You did beautiful. Just before we wrap up, any other gear stuff we should get in here? What amps, any pedals, anything else that should be mentioned?
Well, as always, I had my Fender Super Reverb with me, and I was also using my Plexi Marshall. That was my dad's. Using my 61 Gibson Les Paul SG, which is one of my favorite guitars. Also my 69 Les Paul Black Beauty. And for some of the more speed demon type tracks that you may or may not hear on Record Store Day this fall, I used an Explorer made by my buddy Matt Hughes with Banker Guitars. And always like to have a Super Fuzz lying around, and always my True-Fi Color Driver, which is a great fuzz guitar pedal.
Is there any vintage gear at Capricorn that you used or that was inspiring to have around, even if you didn't use it?
Well, the Hammond organ we were using was Chuck Leavell's Hammond organ, which is mega inspiring. Chuck's piano is there as well. And also Otis Redding's upright piano is there. It's unusable, but we fucking tried. We mic'd it up and we were trying to get some sounds out of it, but it had just, I mean, I think it had been sitting outside. It was just too far gone. We tried. We spent a whole afternoon trying to get some kind of sound out of it, even if it was just going to be like ethereal and just like kind of in the background. But just having it there was inspiring, you know, just knowing that Otis Redding had hung out in there and played piano. And, you know, there were cigarette burns on the keys where he'd put his cigarettes out. It was just the whole town's inspiring, man. We went down to Rose Hill Cemetery and spent a day taking photographs and, you know, visiting our heroes on that hallowed ground, walking around Macon and seeing where Little Richard had hung out. I mean, you got a town that was the Allman Brothers' home, and Little Richard and Otis Redding grew up on the same street, you know. There's a lot of magic in Macon, Georgia.
It
And
sure is.
I'm just happy that people can go there and tap into it.
And then, you know, Marshall Tucker Band obviously are not from Macon, but that's where they recorded those wonderful albums that we love.
Yes, sir. Paul T came down while we were recording, and I don't know, for whatever reason, our producer set us up on the right side of the studio. We didn't even use the whole left side where the drum booth was. And when Paul T came down, he said, man, this is exactly how we used to set up. We just set up on this side of the A room. And that was just really moving.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And we had our good friend, Richard Brent, down there. One morning, I had to put some bass guitar on a track, and I didn't have bass with me. So I called Richard and said, and you know Richard, I said, hey, man, you got anything cool? And for those that don't know, Richard is the curator and the head man over at the Big House Museum, which is where the Allman Brothers Band Museum is and where they lived for a time. I said, you got anything over there that's particularly inspiring of the bass guitar variety? And he said, man, as a matter of fact, I do. And he brought me over Greg Allman's bass guitar, which was a 66 Guild Starfire natural finish. And I guess he had gotten it around the same time Barry Oakley got his. And Barry Oakley's, I guess the story is that the neck broke on his, so he put that pickup from the Guild Starfire in his jazz bass, which became the Doctor bass. And you know, it's funny. It's like getting to ride Dale Earnhardt's motorcycle. You know, it's not something that he's really known for, but it's still cool that Greg Allman played a small part on this record.
Yeah.
And
What song is that bass on?
That's The Shadows.
That's amazing. And that's you playing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, Richard could bring you all kinds of goodies. You know,
he actually brought something from his personal collection. He brought his 52 or 53 gold top Les Paul, and Drew played that. It was one of those we didn't even do a second take. Drew played one pass, and we said, that's it. We're keeping it. And that was for the intro of No Room for Blue. And that's Richard's Les Paul on that track. And he and his lovely wife, they brought us down homemade chicken salad and pimento cheese. I mean,
his wife is no joke as a cook. You know,
man.
you know, they have a restaurant, and she's the real deal.
We were living like kings down there, man. I can't wait to get back.
Congratulations on the record. Congratulations on your health and happiness and being in a good place. It's a beautiful thing. I'm so happy you came through everything and that you are where you are and making this great music.
Me too, man. It's a lot better than the alternative.
Got that right, man. I'll see you on the road, and I look forward to it before too long.
Right. It's good talking to you, man.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus. You too, man.